Hi greedy 3Ders. Now, supporting your models is a necessity with resin 3D printing, and cleaning up the little divots and the little marks and pits afterwards is also part of the process. So what I'm going to do today though is test about 5 or 6 ways in which we can see if we can reduce that pitting, that marking, by using certain different techniques to see how much we can minimize the amount of damage the supports do. And we do have a winner. Stay tuned. For this test today, I'm just going to be using a 40mm base, and I'm printing it on the Ultracraft Reflex RS using Parp 10 settings, and I've let their one-click size orientate everything up for me. Let's get everything off the build plate first, and it's no real surprise, everything's printed lovely. The first one I'm going to do is I'm just going to take it off the build plate and I am going to pull the settings off, so no special treatment whatsoever. Literally, it's off the build plate. I haven't cleaned it, I haven't cured it, done nothing with it. I'm just going to get those supports off, the usual twist and pull method that we all love to hear, and off they pop with relatively little impact. Now you can see there's some pitting there, and that is why I wanted to choose a model like this, so that it would give us a big surface area to see the difference. The next thing I did with all the others was I cleaned them in IPA for about 5 minutes. First dirty IPA and then into some clean IPA, and then I took a little tub, and this has got hot water in. It's not boiling water, it's just hot water in, and I dropped one in, and I'm going to leave it in there for 5 minutes. So I'm going to put that tub to one side just for 5 minutes, and that's sample number 2. For the next sample, I used a hairdryer. Now this is the way that I normally get supports off, with a hairdryer. I found this to be really effective. You've got to be careful when using heat that you don't warp your model out of shape, and if you've got some small pieces on your model, they can bend or they can actually break off, so be careful if you use a hairdryer. I have found this to be quite effective in the past, and as I suspected and as I knew, the supports literally just squeezed off. They'd softened up, of course, and off they popped, but whether they look any better or not under a bit of a closer inspection is yet to be seen. I've got some confidence that it's either going to be a hairdryer or something regarding heat that's going to give us the best results, but do you know what? Let's see what happens. Back after 5 minutes to the sample that's been immersed in some hot water for that 5-minute period, and we're going to get the supports off this one now. Again, everything's gone a little bit soft and squidgy, and again, if you're using heat, just be careful with your model. This one just slid off beautifully, but you can still see there are some marks there, but are they any worse than before? Well, let's come back to it. This one, I've literally just cleaned it in the IPA, and before I've cured it, I'm going to take it off there. So the only difference between this one is it's had a bit of a clean in IPA, so basic cleaning, and that one is another sample we're going to use. The next sample we've cured. I'm going to give it 5 minutes in the curing station, and as you would expect here, this one has gone pretty solid. They're quite crispy, the supports now. They're coming off relatively easy, of course, but I suspect this is going to leave a few divots because it's crispy, but you know what, the end result will tell us all. Next is heat again, but this time don't tell my good lady I've brought the kettle out to the man cave, and I'm using some boiling water on it, and I'm not going to leave it in there for too long, as this will warp any of your little models out of shape. So I'm going to leave it in there for no more than around about 1 minute. That might even be too long, but it's had a minute in there exactly. And watch your fingers when you get it out. I'm just using an old brush, and out it comes. You can see it already starting to fall apart. I suspect if you put a model in here for a minute, you might damage it, or you might lose some of the integrity of it, but for testing purposes, let's see how we get on. And again, I didn't think that would come off any different. It just squeezed off wonderfully. I had left one in soak in IPA for 30 minutes, and that's what I'm going to try next. So this one has been in IPA soaking away for 30 minutes, and came off a little bit easy. It wasn't too hard, wasn't too bad. The next one I'm going to use a set of clippers on. A lot of us use clippers to get these off, and it's a bit of a long-winded method. It's a longer way of doing it, but you know, for completeness, we're going to use the clippers on this one. You can already see there's a couple of scratch marks on there from the clippage, but we'll come back to it. Let's have a closer look at all of them now. We'll start off with the one we did straight after the print, and as you can see, there's quite a bit of pitting on there. I don't think you're going to get away from it completely, but let's have a closer look under a bit of a macro lens and see what it's like. And you can see on there it's a little bit uneven. There's a little bit of raised surfaces. Straight after cleaning, so that one was straight after printing, this one is straight after cleaning, and again I don't think there's a much difference on this. The IPA hasn't done a huge amount to it. You can still see it's pretty much exactly the same as the straight after printing. There's not much change to it. I think if we were being a little picky, it's slightly better, but not too much. After curing, of course, next, and as I suspected, because everything is more brittle, things are going to break in different areas, and you're going to see a little bit of a more, I would suggest, higher points on it, and you can. That's the prediction has come true. If only I could do that with the lottery. I didn't think that would be any different. 30 minutes soaked next in the IPA, and looks even all over, but you can still see all the divots. But when you get a closer look, okay, it's not too bad, it's not horrendous. Again, you're never going to get rid of them completely, so I don't think that's too bad, but I don't think it's the best we're going to get. Clipped off with the clippers next, and you can clearly see all the scratches in there and marks. The other problem with the clippers is you're not going to get everything down to the same level. You're going to miss bits and hit bits and dig into bits, so not really the smoothest surface, and those scratches might make it completely impractical for what you need. Now the one I normally use, the hairdryer next. Let's have a look at that. From that distance you can't really tell, it doesn't look any different, but when you get up close, okay, it's not too bad. There's a little bit of raised divots here and there, but I don't think it's too bad. It looks fairly smooth, but not perfect at all. And we'll move on to some hot water now. It's even melted the writing. The hot water one next doesn't look too bad. Let's have a closer look at it. Now I would say that's pretty much probably the best one we've seen. Everything seems to be uniform. It all seems to be even. I've had a little zoom in there just so you can see. They're still there, but a little bit of sanding, I think, would get that off. Boiling water next, and again this was a minute in boiling water, and looking at it, I think this one doesn't look too bad either up close. You can see that the supports have literally just fallen off it, and it's left less divots. I think heat is the answer, but whether it's the hairdryer, boiling water or hot water, we'll talk about at the end. Now, just for completeness, because we're talking about the Ultracraft Reflex, I've used the pulsing release module, which pumps air underneath the FEP to reduce the suction forces. This means you can use less supports, and the diameter of the supports is even less. So I did 2 models with this. The first one, when I'd finished it, I took it off with a hairdryer, and as you can see, okay, you can see the bits all over it. I don't really see a vast difference there. It still seems to me like when you're looking close that you can see the little bits and pits and some higher little steeples there. Not too good, I would say. But the second result, the pulse releasing module using hot water soaked for 5 minutes, has given an excellent, awesome, fantastic, just what I was hoping for result. Having a closer look at this, you can see that those pitting marks are just almost non-existent. I think we have a winner. Hot water seems to be the answer to get your supports off with virtually zero effort, and leaves behind the minimum of pitting and divots. So for me, moving forward, hot water is the answer. So when you're adding supports, I think there is a certain amount of absolution that you are going to have divots that you are going to need to remove from your supports. I don't think there's any 3D printer or any 3D printing resin that will allow supports not to be there to some degree or other. So one of the important things you need to look at is the placement of your model when you actually put it into the slicer. Now just take here this Wolverine head from Wicked. If I was going to slice old Wolverine and I'd positioned him in this manner, then obviously when I add the supports, you can pretty much guess what is going to happen. So I think you will agree, looking at where the supports have been placed there, that if we printed Wolverine like this, we would, well, the model would be just ruined. There is no way we would be able to clean that up adequately. It would look awful, wouldn't it? So what you would need to do to print a head sculpt like old Wolverine here is to rotate it a different way. And obviously we want to keep the parts that we don't want to have supports on at the bottom on the build plate, and we want to keep the parts that we want to keep fairly clear from supports, which is the face, off the build plate. So now if we support that, although there will be some work to do underneath on the chin and around the back of the hair, you can see that the main part of the face is pretty much clear. Now, other people will tell you to do it different ways, and you have to find what works for you. For me, this is how I orientate my heads. I've seen other people do them on the end of the hair. I'll show you what I mean. It's not how I do them. So I've seen some people print heads like this. Now, again, what you do is up to you. If you ask a couple of people, you'll probably get a couple of different answers. That is definitely not how I would do it. I would do it the way that I suggested before. But I think what's important is whichever way you do your supports, keep the places that you don't want to be getting the support divots and nubbins on there, keep them facing away from the build plate. It's really important, and it's not too hard to do. Now, as you know, I love HeyGears, I love their slicer, but there are times when this will auto orientate the printer to a position that I don't really like. Let me show you what it does with this one. So straight away it's orientated it into a position that we really do not want it to be in, and when it adds the supports, we're going to be back to that position whereby they're going to be all over the face. So as much as I like the one-click slice with the blueprint slicer, there are times when I go through it to make sure that it's not doing something that I disagree with. So just because the blueprint slicer suggests it's going to work, you don't always need to go with it. So moving forward for me, I'm going to be using hot water. I'm going to soak my models in hot water for 5 minutes, and I'm going to get the supports off, as that, from the evidence of the test that I've done today, suggests is going to leave the least amount of post-prep work for me. Now, I'm going to try this moving forward, and I've seen other people use hot water in the past, and I absolutely agree with them. Hot water is the way to get it off. Now, there are risks with it, of course. You could damage your model if it's too hot or you leave them in there too long. However, you've got to weigh the balance up. How much work do you want to do after the print against how much you're going to save by putting them in some hot water, and what is the risk involved in that? I think you can't get away from the fact you're going to get some pitting. And as we've looked at, your orientation of the model is going to be key to reducing it. And the key message is the bits that you want to keep support free face away from the build plate and don't put any supports on them. I'd be interested to hear what you guys think of the supports and where you put them and how you do them. I know a lot of people swear by manual supports. They don't use auto supports. Some people hate the HeyGears auto support system, and some people love it. I'm in the middle with it, really. I love it most of the times, but there are times I have to change it around. Now, if you like what you see today, please support this little old channel by just subscribing. That's an easy way to do it. You can join our Greedy 3D Patreon, and we'd really love to have you on board. And thank you to all my Patreons. You guys are absolutely wonderful. If you want to buy anything like a printer or some paints, I'll put a load of affiliate links down below, and that's another way you can help me support this little channel to continue to make these videos for you. Let me know what you think. I'm really interested to hear your thoughts. Hope you've enjoyed today. See you next time on Greedy 3D.